Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com here at the World Series. That's right, they let me back in. I'll be shooting games 3, 4, and 5 of the Phillies versus Houston here at Citizens Bank Ballpark in Philly.
Jared, I already got you, right?
You did. Back in here, gonna have a different shooting position this time around, up in 116. It's a little further down than I like to be, but the good part is I don't have to worry about the seam at home plate like I did earlier on in the early series. That's not a good sign. And the tarp goes on the field. And the tarp goes on the field. The first game had a little bit of a rain out, so it was postponed, had to get the tarp out on the field. It was actually rained out. So my goal for this video is to show you behind the scenes of what it's like to be a photographer at the World Series. There's a ton of other photographers here. There's a lot of different shooting positions, which you already saw from the last vlog. If you haven't checked that out, go down below in the link and check that one out, because that's a really good behind the scenes look at shooting a playoff baseball game. My goal here is to see what kind of photo story I could tell you through my images, but also give you a behind the scenes look of the video here so you can see what's going on at a World Series game. One of the things I wanted to show you guys was the remote setups that the AP was setting up. Now this is Matt Slocum. He's one of the AP photographers in Philly, and he is an amazing photographer. But the AP, they were kind enough to say, sure, you can tag along for our remote setup. So what they're doing here is trying to scout out where they want to put 3 different remotes. So we walk up to section 416, 418, 420, all these different areas, and you look down onto the field to see where you want to point the camera. So here they're probably using Magic Arms, Manfrotto Magic Arms, and they're shooting with Sony cameras, mostly with 100 to 400 millimeter lenses on. Now this setup was being done for game 1, the one that ended up being rained out, and you might think, well, what happens to their gear if it gets rained out? Well, they just go back and they get the cameras, but they leave the Magic Arms set up for the entire World Series because nobody's gonna mess with them up there because they don't really know that they're there. So what they're looking for is they point towards home plate from different angles or maybe somewhere else into the field because they're trying to get action at the plate. If something's gonna happen, they have a remote trigger in their hand and they start triggering it off and they start getting those images. And this is something that they go through after the game. So it's kind of cool to see the setup happening, and it's not just up high where these remotes are set up. There's remote setups down low as well. So there's like 3 cameras set up on home plate just from the third base side, and they're hoping to get an awesome shot. So what they do is they lock the focus in on home plate. They trigger it with a Pocket Wizard remote trigger. There's the Canons, there's the Sonys, there's I don't think any Nikons were set up in this area, but remote shooting is something that sports photographers end up doing because they can't be everywhere at once, and they figure if they get a good shot and they get lucky enough to get a good shot from the remote, then they did a good job. All right, so now that we're into this World Series vlog, there's a few things that I want to touch base on because I've been able to be back here at the studio and it's easier to get my thoughts out. Now, the first game was rained out. Now, let me just tell you how early I get to the games. 4.5 to 5 hours early is when I was showing up for these games, and you stay at least an hour to an hour and a half after the game because you're just finishing up your work, you're packing everything up, and then you got to sit in traffic to get back home. But the first game was rained out. Major League Baseball made the decision to rain out the game, to postpone it, to come back the next day. So what turned into 3 days in a row of shooting ended up being 4 days because we started to do some work on the first day, then the tarp came out, and the tarp wasn't coming off until the next day. So I was 5 hours early there, and I wasn't even the first photographer there. The room was already filled even before I got there. check this out. On the left, you have the press room, the auxiliary press room where the photographers were gonna go for the wild card series. So they had overflow where the extra shooters could go, and in this case, they had the one row of tables set up. But each round of the playoffs, they added a new row, whereas you can see on the right, this is the setup for the World Series. This is where they squeeze in all of the press photographers, as well as what you can see right here are the Houston Astros photographers, because they have their own creative teams, their own photographers that come in from the away team, so they have access here as well. So you can see all of these people set up. So why do they have to add more spots? Well, it's simple. As each playoff series moves on, it becomes more important. So as you get to the World Series, that is the most important series of the entire baseball season, so more photographers are going to be sent out. Now, where you had AP and Getty just having maybe 1 or 2 photographers covering the wild card round or the early rounds, now you have 4 or 5 photographers for each one of these wire services. Plus, you have news photographers that are local. You've got Houston photographers that were sent in. You had some other people come in from all over the place, and you got me, a YouTuber who takes some pictures. So I try to not take up the space of the, I'll call them working photographers, even though I'm actually there working. I don't want to get in their way, but the rooms get more filled, and I didn't actually have a spot at a table, and that was totally fine with me because I don't need to transmit directly from the game. There's editors for Major League Baseball that are always, there's card runners running them cards, which I don't have any footage of, and they're editing and they're putting stuff out into the world. But the more important the series are, the more photographers they send out. Now, I chose to take up a spot behind the tables. Yeah, it's not the most glamorous in the world, but everybody worked together. There's so many good photographers there, and everybody was friendly. Everybody worked together to help each other out. And obviously, you can see right here that says Elsa right on the battery chargers. Now, Elsa is, I believe, a Getty photographer, and her byline just reads Elsa.
Hi, Elsa.
Hey. How's it going?
So on the Getty's website, if you ever see a photo and it just says Elsa, it's just Elsa. That's what they know her by. So you're always taking the opportunity to charge your batteries up and prep everything before the game. Now, the interesting thing is that I like to talk to photographers. I like to talk to people. I like to talk a lot.
Oh, nailed it.
I'm turning it on, people work teaming in.
But I also have to remember that these people are here to do a job. This is the most important baseball series in the entire season, and they're focused. I know how focused I get before a shoot, and in this case, this is their job. So they have to make sure they get the images, and they don't want to be distracted by someone like me putting a camera in their face. So that's why I didn't always put a camera in someone's face. I just went out there, I got some B-roll, I talked to people if they asked me questions, and I tried not to get in the way because they're there to get their job done. Let me jump in here real quick because I want to show you this photo from the World Series edited with FroPack 3, starting with Zoolander. That looks cool, but check out Prestige Worldwide. That is awesome catch-all. November Rain. Then we've got Mount Airy. Then we've got Mentos, followed by King Contrast. We've got Eckert, Capone, Canadian Tuxedo, Almost Famous, Fifth Element, but I also want to go up to FroPack 1 because with one click, check this out, Skittles. That's how good Skittles looks, and that's how I edited most of the photos that you've seen from the World Series. Because not only does it speed up my raw workflow, but it gives me a great starting point both on the computer as well as on mobile. And if you didn't know, we created 15 custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPack3. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters. And if you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale. Or if you want to get Skittles as part of FroPack 1, you can get the triple play bundle with FroPack 1, 2, and 3 and save even more. Now, let's get back to the vlog. Now, you know gear isn't everything, but when you're in this press area, this auxiliary area, you're talking about millions of dollars in camera gear there. Everybody's got a 400 2.8. There's 300 2.8s. There's 600 f4s. There's multiple R3 cameras and A1s and A9s, as well as some Z9s. There were some Nikon shooters there for newspapers.
I think this is where they moved all the Nikon shooters, because we've got a Nikon shooter here and a Nikon shooter here and a Nikon shooter there. So we got multiple Nikon shooters.
Getty has their deal and AP has their deal. So Getty shoots with all Canon gear, AP shoots with all Sony gear. So you have all of the different gear around there, and you've got millions of dollars of gear just waiting to be used. Everybody's got everything. Oh, also, there's a ton of think tank bags. Every photographer here rolls in at least 1, 2, if not 3 think tank bags, because that's what the pros do use. It's stuff that's built for the pros by pro photographers, and that's why we all use think tank gear. So before the games, I like to go out on the field for batting practice because it gets me closer to the players, it gets me closer to all the press, it just gets me out onto the field for an opportunity to get some different content. Now, for the World Series, this is insane. You have news stations set up from all over the country. You've got your Houston news stations, you've got your local Phillies stations, you've got Major League Baseball, you've got ESPN Deportes because it's in Spanish, you've got regular ESPN, you've got Fox. Everybody has someone on the field set up. So it's kind of cool to take a walk around the stadium or walk around the field to see everybody that's out here, and to see the entire setup is kind of insane. You got to be careful where you're walking so you don't get in anybody's shot, you don't get in the way, but you know, everybody's in the same boat. You respect their space, they respect your space, and you just get your job done. Now, this is one of the coolest cameras that you will find during a broadcast. Fox brings out some of these Phantom super high frame rate cameras that give you the ultra slow motion shots. It's cool because it shows you the batter swinging and hitting the ball in super slow motion, or the pitcher, or wherever they point it. But what I found interesting was the fact that they're using an old 85, I believe this is a 1.8. This isn't even the 1.4. Yeah, there it says it, 85 1.8 lens is what they're using on the front of this Phantom camera, which is insane. And then this, I believe, is an older 300 2.8 that they're using on this camera. I watched them during the game, and this is all manually focused. So someone is actually focusing this lens while they're trying to get this slow motion footage. Those are some of the coolest cameras out at the stadium.
So what do I look for during pregame or batting practice? I'm looking for unique images. If there's an opportunity for portraits, or of course storytelling shots, that's what I'm looking for. In this case, for the third game of the World Series, I was out there shooting with the new Canon 135 1.8, and that right there is a super unique lens, and the images are fantastic. The colors are super vibrant and saturated and go boom, especially when I hit them with some Skittles from FroPack 1. The contrast is great. I'm really enjoying that lens. So my whole challenge was to take the 135 out onto the field and see what I could get with it. No, I don't get the wide angle shots, but I get a bunch of group shots of a bunch of the Phillies hanging out, or I get pictures of Schwarber. The sun was actually coming in from the back, and I used his head to block the sun, and that creates a little bit of flare. If it was a 200 f2 or a 200 1.8, that would have been a little better for that situation. But 135 is a fantastic lens, and so far I am loving what that lens does.
Colors to Harper. It's good. Right center field. Lightning strikes. 2-0 Phillies. Bryce Harper. Got a call, starts the second. And rip over Alvarez and gone. And Marsh. Brandon Marsh. It's a fly ball to right field. And gone. Swung out into the air. Center field. Going back up. A two-run center field home run for Kyle Schwarber. 6-0. Hoskins with a drive. Left field. Wow! A powered their way to a Game 3 win. 5 home runs, 7-0.
Let me quickly break down Game 3 for you, which was the first World Series game that I've ever shot. Now, from up top, it's a difficult angle because you're not down low anymore getting those action shots or with the fans in the background. But having World Series painted on the field, I was able to frame the batter out so that it said World Series, and I could have the batter in, say, the bottom part of the frame with the 400 2.8, so you could get the storytelling aspect. So you know that this was actually at the World Series, and it's not just a tight photo that you have no context for. Now, Game 3 was amazing for the Phillies. They had 5 home runs, which I believe tied a World Series record for the amount of home runs in a World Series game. It was insane. There were just so many bombs being hit, and the net was not an issue at all from here. When you shoot wider, you just notice that the net is there if you're shooting a wider angle shot. And you notice it because it's there. And part of that is it's been there for a couple of years because it's meant to protect fans. So if it's part of the stadium and part of the game and part of the series, then it's all right to see it on those wider angle shots. For the first home game of the World Series in each location, whether it's Houston or in this case for Game 3 in Philly, they always announce the players and they line up across the field, and then they may bring out a really big American flag and there might be fireworks. And my goal was to get the opening shot, right? To get the national anthem shot when the fireworks go off and the people are going nuts. So I ended up walking upstairs to section, I believe it's 420, and I had to find the right area to get the best angle. Now, here's the shot. Now, I'm gonna tell you how I made this. I ended up shooting this with the 11-24 adapted f4 lens. So that's an older lens that's adapted because Canon for the RF mount doesn't have any RF lenses natively that go wider just yet. So my goal for this photo was to go pole to pole, to be able to get the lights on the right and the lights on the left, and I was able to actually do that. It's not easy when you're up there because there was another photographer for a newspaper next to me, and you don't want to bump them, but you can't be in the exact center, you can't be in the perfect space, plus there's 50-some thousand people waving their flags, waving their towels, and you don't want to get in their way, and you don't want to be like, hey, could you not do this, because they paid money to be there. So it wasn't easy to get that framing. If I could go back just a little bit more, it would have been better, but I was able to get those lights in there and shoot when the fireworks went off and ended up getting a really classic shot. This is what you want. You can see it says Phillies down on the field at the bottom. You can see it says World Series. That's important. You've got the American flag. You've got both of these light stanchions in there, which is what I wanted to get to show as much of the ballpark and as many fans as possible. You got the Liberty Bell lit up with the American flag. You've got Philadelphia in the distant background over there, and you got the fireworks going off, and to me, this is a winning shot.
So it's just a little over 4 hours before Game 4 is supposed to start. Now, yesterday I found out that my location was going to be 116, which is right up above my head, right back there. So I already have a game under my belt shooting in that location. Now, for the prior series, I've been down the third base side next to the dugout shooting, and that's been a really good position to get some awesome action shots with the crowd in the background, the players going nuts on the bench, and really get some really nice action shots. And this brings up other unique challenges, because no, I'm not down low anymore. Left-handed batters like Bryce Harper are going to look, I'm not going to see his face because he has a flap on his helmet, so I won't see his face. But I was able to get a picture where you could see his eye right after he hits the home run, and that was the best I could do from that location. But you as a photographer are going to be given a position, and you have to make the best of it. And so that's what I'm here to do, is try to make the best of that position.
You hold this.
Oh, am I your assistant? I can do that. See that, guys? I'm an assistant today.
last out. Down 5-0 in game 4. Real Muto. Bouncing ball to third. Picked by Bregman. Throw across in time. The Astros have a World Series no-hitter.
Game 4 was a little more difficult to shoot for everybody, not just me. I talked to a bunch of the shooters downstairs, and they had trouble too because not much happened. The Astros had 1 inning, they scored 5 runs. The Phillies didn't get a hit the whole time, and basically the only picture that was worthy of getting from a news standpoint was the ending where the pitchers came together at the mound after the game when they got their no-hitter. And it's still a no-hitter. It doesn't matter how many pitchers you have. If they don't get a hit, the Phillies don't get a hit, it's still a no-hitter. So that's how it works. So what I was trying to do was find different images yesterday, and I ended up basically not getting anything because the Phillies didn't put the ball in play. So that's going to happen. So right behind me, we've got the Phillies taking some batting practice today before Game 5, and that's a good thing because Game 4 they didn't exactly hit the ball as they were no-hit.
Let me jump in here real quick and let you know that this video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you're looking to build your very own online portfolio, use what I've been using for my personal website at jaredpolin.com for over 10 years.
10 years!
The reason? It's simple, easy, affordable, and I don't need to know coding. In fact, after doing a photo shoot with the band Poison, I was able to put up a gallery of the images in a matter of minutes, and they're out there in the world. If you want to get yourself a 14-day free trial, head on over to squarespace.com/FroKnowsPhoto. If you decide that it's for you, use the code FroKnowsPhoto at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Now, back to the vlog. Now guess what? I was able to get approved to shoot down low for Game 5. Back to that spot on the third base side right next to the dugout. Now here's the reasoning. Game 5 was not a deciding game, meaning that no one during Game 5, whoever won that game, wasn't going to win the World Series. Because the Houston Astros won Game 4, that meant that they were going to send the Game 6 and possibly Game 7 back to Houston. So not every photographer for the news agencies or for newspapers were going to show up for Game 5. And I thought that this might be the case, so I asked my contact, hey, will I be able, did a spot open up down low? Because if you never ask, you never know what the answer is going to be. And I knew that there might be a possibility that someone wasn't showing up, so I took my chance to say, by the way, is someone not going to be here down low? Could there be room for me to come back in and shoot? So the person in charge of this got back to me 30 minutes later after I asked and said, yes, this agency isn't going to be here. You can shoot from their spot. And you never know until you ask. You do it nicely, but don't just sit back in any situation in photography and not ask. And then end up wondering what could have been. This is one of those situations that you don't get something unless you ask. These people that are in charge of these areas are not going to remember all the time to come talk to you, but like, oh, by the way, do you want to shoot down here? You've got to ask. And ask nicely, and if they say no, there's no space, then there's no space. You don't make a big deal out of it, but you ask nicely, you say thank you. If anything changes, please let me know. In this case, boom, Jared, you can go shoot in that spot again, and that's exactly what I did. So in the prior rounds to the World Series, there was a lot more space down here to shoot. There were those obstructed view areas that I like to shoot from. Well, now they put the Houston Astros creative there. They put the Phillies creators there. They put more photographers down low, but thankfully some of the photographers could stand up and shoot. Now, here's my spot. Now, to the left of me, I have Doug Mills. He is out of DC and shoots for the New York Times. He does a ton of stuff in the political world, photographing all the presidents. He's on Air Force One all the time. He is an unbelievable photojournalist. Now, to my right, we've got this guy, Jason Seasons. I got to shoot next to him for a lot of the games, and me, I'm squeezed right in the middle. And one of the things I noticed is that the photographers would take off their lens hoods to give people more room so that you're not blocking someone's view, because when you're all squeezed together, you're all there to get the shot. So I went ahead, took my lens hood off, went and sat back where I was sitting. But another thing I ended up doing was actually backing up, because we were really clumped in there. And I know that Doug needs to be able to swing around and get the shot, and Jason needs to be able to swing around and get the shot, and it just felt like I might be in their way. And knowing that this is their livelihood and this is their job, and me, I'm just telling the behind the scenes story of the World Series and what it's like as a photographer. So I made the decision to back up, to move my seat so that Doug and Jason and the other photographers could move a little more freely without me getting in the way. Like I said, this is their livelihood. Me, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a photographer first and foremost who makes YouTube videos, and I know it wasn't as important for me to get the shots where these guys are literally plugged into the Ethernet and transmitting photos instantly after they get the winning shots, sending them out into the world. They got to get the job done, and I didn't want to hinder them at all. So that's why I backed up, and if I missed something, it's okay. It wasn't as important for me to get it as it was for them. You need to work with the people around you. If you're an asshole photographer, you get in people's ways, you don't help, you don't look out for them, for other photographers, you don't do what you need to be doing, they're not going to help you. Other photographers are not going to look out for you. Jason was very helpful for me because I made sure I wasn't in his way in the early series, and he was very happy to shoot next to me because I'm very aware of what's going on in these situations, and I understand my place there and I understand their place there. So that's what I made the choice to do, is to back up and let these other photographers get their job done. But some amazing photographers out there. Now, here's something that I learned when I was shooting next to these professional sports photographers, is that I don't shoot enough. They're shooting early, they're shooting often, and they're shooting through the action. What do I mean by this? So like, I will shoot, but then I'll take my finger off the trigger. And then the action is still happening, and I end up missing something that they ended up getting because they shoot all the way through the play. They're not afraid to take a lot of images, 10,000, 12,000 plus a game, because they just need to pluck out those winning shots. But if they're not shooting, they're missing shots. I ended up missing a shot where the players got into a pickle, AKA a rundown, and the Phillies first baseman was running towards the player down the line, pushing him back to third base when the guy went down and he kneed him in the head. Well, I don't have him getting kneed in the head because for whatever reason, I was watching it through the viewfinder and not shooting the damn photos. So something I learned was you can't be afraid to shoot. You can't be afraid to have extra images because it's not film, right? You need to get that action. You never know when it's gonna happen. So shoot early, shoot often, and follow through the action because you don't know what you're gonna get after the fact.
Nick Castellanos, bouncing ball to short. Pena's there, steps into the throw. Astros take game 5 in a thriller. 3-2 the final score.
All right, so it wasn't meant to be. It was a 3-2 game. Phillies had a chance to take a lead, tie it up, do something, but unfortunately they did not come through in game 5. So it now heads back to Houston, with Houston leading 3-2, chance to wrap it up at home, and for Phillies a chance to tie it for game 6 and to send it to game 7. And this basically wraps up my season of having a full-on credential to shoot every game in every stadium if I so choose with my pass that I had, and I had the playoff pass, and I can show it to you now. Also, never show your media passes before the event is over, because the last thing you want to have happen is someone do something with your pass that they find on the internet. So it's bad form to take pictures of your passes and then post them. So definitely don't be that guy to do that. So a little disappointed here. Would have been nice to see another win here, but really thankful that I was able to shoot every round of the playoffs here. Unexpected, wasn't expected, and it was my first World Series. So that's where we'll leave it, guys. See ya.
So before I jump into the computer to show you my favorite images from the World Series that I captured, I actually booked a flight for Game 7. I booked a flight to go to Houston early in the morning in case the Phillies won Game 6, which they ended up not winning, so it didn't matter. I ended up canceling my flight. I wasn't guaranteed a pass, but I was going to fly out to Houston to go to the stadium, hopefully get my pass approved to shoot Game 7, and if I didn't, then I would have just made some vlog entry from like, I took a shot. Because if I didn't go and I ended up getting approved for a pass and I wasn't there, if the Phillies wanted to go to Game 7, I would have been highly disappointed. So I was gonna fly out early in the morning, regardless of having a pass approved at that time or not, because I kind of had a feeling that if I got there, my pass would end up being approved. So it wasn't meant to be this time around. They didn't end up winning Game 6. Houston Astros ended up winning in 6 games, and that's all they wrote for the World Series in 2022. Let's jump into those Game 5 photos. This is during batting practice. Obviously, batting practice gets old quick, and the reason I was down here doing batting practice again was the 135 1.8. I was testing out the Canon RF 135 1.8, so I figured I've got the opportunity to do that. Maybe I'll get something good. So I just like this photo because it was focused on him at 1.8 during the batting practice. So Schwarber, nice colors. You know, you're looking for different angles. What could set you apart? Now, I'm not allowed on the other side of this rope. I'm not allowed to touch the grass at all. I have to stay on the warning track because I'm not a team photographer or a Major League Baseball photographer. They could go onto the field or get closer as long as someone's not hitting the ball. I ended up getting a portrait, really beautiful looking portrait, threw some Skittles on it, looks great. Most of these are edited with Skittles, but this is the type of stuff that I'm looking for on the field. I want these low angles that give us some nice dimension. You try to make the players look larger than life. You know, Schwarber coming off the field with the sun actually coming through the stadium at this time. What time was I shooting this one? This was at 5, 10, and 11 seconds. So just as the sun was starting to set here in Philly. Pre-game, they brought out Meek Mill. He is a rapper. I don't understand why people love him so much personally, but in this framing, I got World Series in the background, and yes, this is the LED board, and that's what you get when you shoot with an electronic shutter. But we got Meek Mill on the front of the Philly Fanatics quad. We got the Fanatic here wearing his big P sign, and people try to get hype for, or that's what he was there for, was trying to get people hype out there during the game. Basic shot. Is this a good shot? Oh, now's a good time for me to tell you this, that it's not about taking stock images during the World Series or during the playoffs. Stock images is something like this. It's a picture of a pitcher. There's no context. It doesn't say World Series. You can't see it say World Series anywhere. So it's a stock image. This is the type of stuff you do during the season. There's 80-some home games to do this for. You don't shoot stock images during the playoffs because you don't need them. Anyway, I just wanted to shoot this picture. Now, this is Schwarber hitting a home run again in the game. There's the ball going out. Well, yeah, you can see it going out, then follow through with the shot. You've got the Cy Young winner, ended up being the Cy Young Verlander here, but you got the player in the background, you've got the upset pitcher here, and you got the fans going absolutely nuts. Schwarber comes around, you got Rhys Hoskins, they do this jumpy jump thing, and I just wanted to get a little creative. I was getting bored. Yes, the World Series, baseball is baseball, and sometimes if nothing's going on, which you never know when anything's gonna actually happen, I just wanted to get a little more creative and try a slower shutter speed. In this case, 1/25 of a second, just trying to get that motion. I was trying some with panning, some with not panning, because sometimes you can get something creative that ends up being a really cool shot. Not all the time, and I'm not saying this is great, because it's not great, and this isn't great, it's okay, but just something slightly different. Now, you got Bregman right here catching, he's the third baseman. You've got all the fans back there. You've got the ball coming in, he's catching it. You got to follow this action. Now, this was the pickle I was talking about. This is the catcher, Real Muto. He's running down to try and tag the guy out. Then, after throwing it to third base, they end up throwing it to our first baseman, who's now chasing after the player. And for whatever reason, I stopped shooting while he's chasing the player, and this player ends up getting kneed in the back of the head. And I missed it. Everybody else got it. The full-time sports photographers, they got it because they're better than me when it comes to that. They know exactly when to shoot. They keep shooting. I was watching and not shooting. I shouldn't have to react all the time, because what I've noticed with the R3, if you see it happen and you hit the button, you miss it. This is why the future is going to be bright when we've got pre-shooting even for a quarter of a second or a half a second, and post-shooting for a half a second as well. That's where you're going to start seeing, you're going to get better stuff, because you see it, you can react, sometimes you miss it. But in this case, I ended up missing it, unfortunately, but everybody else got it, and it's not life or death for me. This shot I kind of liked. We've got the ball right here. It was a home run by the Astros. The Phillies end up losing because of, obviously these runs. But don't forget to swing the camera around and get the dejection of the home team and all the fans being upset. Yes, like this guy, he's crying. He's like, oh no, what's going on? And these people are fighting for the ball, and then they throw it back. And then, last ditch effort, we had Schwarber here batting, and this was a rocket that he hit down first base, and the player that came in to replace this guy who got kneed in the back of the head was in the perfect position. Ball hit the glove. He fell right on the bag, and that basically saved 2 runs. The Phillies might have won that game if that guy didn't make a great defensive play. There was even an amazing defensive play in the outfield. I didn't get the picture of the guy catching the ball at the wall because I didn't really know what to look for. I didn't get it. A lot of people got this guy catching and saving the game, going up the wall to catch the ball, and someone in the stands took an amazing, almost dirt angel, snow angel type photo, and that's I was blown away by that photo, because it looked just like where the guy landed. Amazing photo. That basically saved the game right there. If not, it could have been different. The Phillies might have won this game, and I might have ended up going to Game 7 of the World Series to cover. So I know this is a long video. This is a behind-the-scenes look at shooting a World Series. I'm super appreciative that I had the opportunity to shoot all these games, to get to be running on the field during the playoffs when the Phillies won. To be a part of this whole thing was incredible, and I'm really appreciative to everybody who followed along all my stories, and to Major League Baseball for setting me up with the pass, and all the other photographers that I worked with throughout the playoffs and this year at the Phillies. I thank you guys very much. So to end this entire vlog, we're going to do a slideshow of some of my favorite photos from the postseason, and that's going to be a wrap up there, guys. So stay tuned to watch that. Thank you very much for watching. Jared, Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.